Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
My sister Daphne always thought I would never get married. When we met, she would often say to me, "Get yourself together, take care of your appearance. Although even that won't save you, you're hopelessly ugly." I tried to pretend that I didn't pay attention to these hurtful words, although afterwards I cried into my pillow at night from hurt. But one fine day, namely on Thanksgiving Day, a real miracle happened and justice prevailed. Before I tell you this interesting story, I would like to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, and after listening, leave your expert comment. Well, buckle up, here we go. Thanksgiving at my parents' house always smelled like rosemary, lemon, and quiet disappointment. But this year, something else simmered beneath the surface, a sharp, metallic anticipation, like a storm pressing against the walls. My mother, Gabrielle, stood at the head of the table, crystal glass raised high. Her diamond rings flashed under the chandelier, casting little shards of light across Daphne's glowing face. To Daphne, she declared, voice rich with practiced pride, "Our radiant bride-to-be, our greatest joy, our achievement. She said it like Daphne were a trophy she'd sculpted with her own hands. Everyone clapped on cue, and then my mother turned, slowly, deliberately, toward me. And so she cooed, tilting her head with that gentle, poisonous sweetness she perfected years ago. "Alyssa, when's yours? Or should we all start placing bets?" Laughter rippled around the table, soft but cutting. I didn't laugh. Instead, I set my fork down, folded my napkin with deliberate calm, and lifted my gaze to meet hers. My voice came out steady, steadier than my heartbeat. I already had mine. The room froze. Silence poured in, heavy and velvet, swallowing laughter, swallowing breath. Even the candles flickered as if startled. My mother blinked, once, sharply. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said. "Philip and I, we're already married." The air cracked. Daphne's smile collapsed mid-curve. My father's hand stalled halfway to his wineglass. A cousin choked on stuffing. Chairs creaked beneath shifting weight as 20 pairs of eyes swung toward me. And in that suspended moment, that breathless, echoing quiet, something deep inside me trembled awake. A nerve I had buried since childhood. A truth I had swallowed too many times. Why didn't they know? Why didn't they come? And what would happen now that the silence finally broke? Growing up in my family felt like living in a house with one spotlight, and it was glued to Daphne. She was the prodigy, the star, the future of the Quinn name, as our mother liked to say. I learned early that my role was simpler. Stay quiet, stay useful, stay out of the way. At school plays, Daphne sang center stage in a sequined dress. I held cardboard props in the dark wings. At birthdays, Daphne received camera flashes, themed cakes and speeches. I got a polite "make a wish, sweetheart," followed by plates being cleared. Even my voice sounded quieter compared to hers, or maybe I trained it to be. For a long time, disappearing felt easier. If no one looked for me, no one could be disappointed. When I was 19, I packed my things one morning and went to Detroit. No one in the house even noticed my disappearance because they loved me so much. But everything changed in Detroit. The city was sharp-edged, imperfect, and alive. It didn't need me to be someone else. And Philip, sweet, steady Philip, looked at me like he'd been waiting his whole life to find a person exactly like me. You know, he told me once while we shared a $6 pizza on the floor of our first apartment, "You don't take up too much space, you take up exactly the right amount." I cried then. Quietly, he pretended not to notice, the way kind people do. When he proposed, ringless at first, hands shaking, I said yes before he finished the sentence. We built our wedding ourselves. Borrowed chairs, neighborhood lights, our closest friends dressed in mismatched outfits. It was imperfect, heartfelt, real. Only one thing stung. My family's absence. I sent invitations, tracked them, waited, refreshed my inbox until my fingers cramped. Nothing. Until I saw it, the tracking logs, the signatures. Daphne Quinn. Why would my own sister erase the biggest day of my life? And what was she so desperate to hide? The room felt thinner than air when I reached for my phone. Everyone leaned forward without meaning to. Gabrielle like a marionette pulled by old reflexes, Daphne rigid as if braced for a performance. Philip's hand found mine under the table, his thumb pressed, steadying. I have proof, I said. No tremor in my voice now, only the clarity that comes from long practice. I unlocked my phone and, with one practice swipe, laid the receipts on the table like cards in a courtroom. Postal tracking, 4 deliveries. Signature panels, 4 signatures. Names printed neat as prayer. Daphne Quinn. My mother's fingers went white around her glass. Alyssa, that can't be. It is. I rotated the screen so everyone could see the evidence. Timestamps, delivery confirmations, and then the family email log. Ethan, Philip's brother to be exact, had helped me pull up. An opening, a delete, a device ID traced to our old house. Daphne's face strained. I don't remember, she stammered. My father squinted. Who else had access? Everyone's eyes slid to her. You opened them and deleted them, I said, quiet but final. You made sure none of us would know. She laughed once, too high, too brittle. You're making this into a drama. No, I said. You did. My throat tightened. You turned my wedding into something you could erase. There was a beat where sound renegotiated itself. Plates clinked, a chair scraped, someone whispered, "Oh my God." Gabrielle's hand flew to her mouth. Daphne, tell her what, mother? Daphne's voice cracked open, a small raw thing. That I was jealous? That I felt invisible? That I wanted? Her sentence fell apart, raw and ugly and true. If someone you loved erased the biggest day of your life, what would you do next? Leave a comment, tell me how you would react. The room trembled, not physically, but in that way a house does when the truth finally enters it. My mother rose first, smoothing her blouse, as if she could iron out the disaster unraveling before her. We don't need theatrics, Alyssa. Sit down. Daphne, apologize. We can fix. No. The word left my mouth before I even felt myself stand. It wasn't loud, but it sliced through the room like a cold wind. My father stared as if I'd just spoken in a foreign language. Alyssa, don't start this. I'm not starting anything, I said. I'm ending it. Daphne's breath hitched. Alyssa, I didn't think it would go this far. You hid my wedding, I said, voice trembling but steady. You erased the one moment I finally felt seen. Her eyes glossed. You don't get it. You left. You built this life, this new version of you. And everyone kept talking about how proud they were. I was drowning, and you didn't even look back. Something cracked in me then, not anger, but the grief of realizing how long I'd been blamed for breathing. I didn't leave you, I whispered. I just finally walked out of the shadow you never noticed you cast. My mother stepped in. Enough, Alyssa. You are overreacting. I laughed, a small broken sound. Really? Name one time you chose me over Daphne. Silence. My father looked down. Daphne looked away. Gabrielle opened her mouth and closed it again. That was my answer. Philip squeezed my hand, grounding me as tears burned hot at the corners of my vision. Not weak tears, clarifying ones, cleansing. I won't shrink anymore, I said. Not to keep the peace. Not for this family. A hush fell so deep, it felt like the house was holding its breath. What happens when the quiet daughter finally refuses to stay quiet? I placed my napkin on the table, the final punctuation on 30 years of quiet endurance. I'm done, I said, calm but unshakable. I'm done waiting for you to see me, for you to care, for Daphne to step aside even for a moment. Gabrielle's hand shot toward me. Alyssa, don't be hasty. No, I interrupted, voice steady. You've had decades to notice me, to value me, and you chose her instead. Every single time. Daphne's face twisted, the practiced mask of perfection cracking. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to erase my wedding? I asked, letting the words hang like shards of glass. To delete my joy because you were afraid someone else might shine. Her lips quivered. No, I said softly, heartbreak and strength mingling. No excuses. Your jealousy isn't mine to carry. Your choices are yours alone. Philip draped his coat over my shoulders. Come on, he said gently, his eyes full of quiet admiration. Let's go home. Home. A place built on care, love, and truth, not shadows and whispers. I stepped into the cold November night, leaving behind a mother who never truly saw me, a father who stood by silently, and a sister who spent her life trying to outshine me. For the first time, I was free. I was whole. I was Alyssa Quinn, and I would never be invisible again. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, but liberation feels better than revenge. Would you have walked away too?
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.